A generation ago, women going through menopause could be thought of as losing vitality, femininity, and sexuality. The symptoms were thought of as just simply part of aging, and women often suffered in silence. But now, women are taking menopause in stride and are thriving by staying active, educating themselves on the facts, and asking their doctors for help. Joining me now to talk about this subject is Dr. Robert Andrews with First Physicians. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Well, I know, as you said, there's lots that can be talked about this subject, and we do have a little bit older audience. So let's talk about, just first throw out there, when does menopause typically begin, but are there conditions that may exist why someone might start, say, sooner or really later?
All right. The average age of menopause in this country is about 51 and a half. And the perimenopause, the symptoms leading up to being menopausal, goes on an average of about 4 to 5 years. It's considered abnormal for a woman to go through menopause before age 35. We really don't see that very often. That is something that would need a specific assessment. But beyond that, women can start having symptoms at any time. And it's frequently, I'll give an analogy of a car that's losing gas going down the road. A woman, for instance, will be cycling regularly once a month if that's normal for her. And then she may skip a cycle, have 2 in a month, and then, that was a little bump in the road. So cruising, cruise again. And then she'll go 6 months, happens again. Goes 3 months, happens again. 7 months, happens again. So the closer she gets to the change, the more likely she's going to be having symptoms. Now, with the symptoms, it can affect virtually everything you can think of. Even while a woman is still cycling normally, she can start having some of the most common things you hear about, like hot flashes and night sweats. A woman is born with all the eggs that she's going to have for her lifetime, and she tends to recruit about 20 eggs on average per month, and until they're used up. Her brain tells her ovary what to do. Her ovary tells the rest of the body what to do. If her eggs are at a point they just are not going to get released, or if they're really reluctant, the brain's having to work harder and harder, and the harder that brain has to tell the ovary what to do, the more likely she has to have symptoms. And even after she's gone through the change and there's no more eggs, her brain, for the rest of her life, is still going to try to make that ovary.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. We hear a lot about going through menopause and hot flashes and this kind of thing, but let's talk about the women that have already completed that change. What are some special things that they need to be aware of, or symptoms they may have, or we hear about hormone replacement therapies? Talk us a little bit about the postmenopausal woman and what she might need to know that has changed.
All right. Well, first, a lot of people don't realize that once they are menopausal, things aren't necessarily going to get better. About 15% of women never have major menopausal symptoms. About 15% of women will never quit. So hopefully most women, given time, will evolve and transition through this time to a point where they can live comfortably without some of the major symptoms. Now, first off, the symptoms that you're trying to address are going to determine what approach you're going to take to make them feel better. For instance, it can affect, you can have hot flashes, night sweats, it can affect your hair, eyesight, concentration, memory, bladder, libido, skin, concentration, memory, everything you can think of. Or you may just have a woman says, well, I don't have any symptoms. Well, my joints ache. Well, that actually can be a menopausal symptom for some women. Or I just can't sleep well. So depending on the problem, we try to determine our treatment. There is nothing more effective than hormone replacement to help menopausal women with their symptoms in general. Unfortunately, a menopausal, or giving a woman hormones, is not going to just miraculously get through the change, then they can stop it and they live fine for the rest of their lives. They are still going to tend to have symptoms if they come off of the hormones. So they would need to decide what they want to do. Now, the general recommendations for women that take hormones is take the smallest amount for the shortest amount of time. There's a lot of focus when a study came out a few years ago called the Women's Health Initiative Study that just scared everybody. In general, for women who take estrogen and progesterone, and that's the most common combination for women who have not had a hysterectomy, they saw out of 1,000 women 1 additional breast cancer, 1 additional heart attack, and 1 additional stroke per 1,000 women per year. 1 fewer colon cancer, 1 fewer fracture per 1,000 women per year. So it tilts towards no take it. It's not a huge individual risk, but from a public health perspective, 1 in 1,000 here and 1 in 1,000 there is a lot of women. So we need to do what we can that is best and individualize their treatment to the particular woman.
So there are risks, so they do need to have that very frank
Absolutely.
conversation with their doctor. And speaking of, I've heard some women say they prefer their gynecologist to be like their family practitioner or vice versa. What are your thoughts on how these two professionals would interact?
A lot of it has to do with your training, but most of us in this community that I'm aware of try to make our practice complement what the primary care physicians really pay attention to. Your average internist and family practitioner is going to be really on top of your blood pressure. Are you prone to diabetes? Keeping an eye on your thyroid, risk for heart disease, cancer screening, things like that. So I try to make what I do complement what they're paying attention to. And obviously it has an emphasis on female parts, you know, breast examination, breast health. Bladder and bowel issues are very common, especially in the menopausal woman. Hormonal or menopausal symptoms and management of that. Going back a little bit to the hormone replacement, we talked about menopausal management, and I mentioned hormones are the most effective management in general. There are alternatives to hormones, and a lot of women are afraid of hormones. If you come in and I say, you need to take this, you'll feel so much better, and you're scared for whatever reason, I give you all the data and I say this should be a safe thing for you to do, but it scares you, well, that's not a good quality of life.
Right.
So my job is to help educate the woman about what her options are and try to make things the best that we can for her.
Well, I've heard some people say they're just concerned that post-menopause, they're just starting, the aging process speeds up, skin and a couple of things that you mentioned, joints, even bones. There's a lot of supplements out there. What's your take on vitamins and supplements?
Well, first, I'm not menopausal, my joints are killing me. Again, depends on the supplement. For instance, you mentioned joints. There's some pretty good data suggesting that for people who have arthritic problems with their joints, things like glucosamine chondroitin are very effective. When it comes to menopausal symptoms, most of the data hasn't been particularly helpful in finding a good alternative to hormone replacement. Now, no matter what they do, you're going to see at least a 20% placebo effect. So my main concern is as long as it's safe, whatever works is absolutely fine.
Well, we're just about out of time, so if someone wanted more information, where would they go possibly?
First off, if they went to the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, that's ACOG, on the internet, you can find a lot of information on menopause. Some of the hospitals, Baptist Hospital has information on menopause and different seminars, and their family practitioner, internist, gynecologist can all help you through this.
Great. Well, thanks for being here.